Which one of the 11 supernovas was the biggest disappointment? Question mark. Dun, dun, dun! I'm gonna save you some time. It was Apoo. Alright, thanks for watching, everybody. Teching, signing out. Okay, alright, fine. We'll do the video, I suppose. Alright, I mentioned this a little while ago. I can't remember where I talked about it. It might have been a live stream, but I was gonna do a tier list on the level of disappointment from the super rookies, you know, and I decided not to do that like the tier list structure because there's only 11 of them, so tier lists really work the best when you have like a lot of characters to put on the tier list when you're ranking like the best baker in all of One Piece or something. But what kind of madman would do that and then make 3 videos about it? There's a playlist up here. But anyway, no, today we are going to be looking at the super rookies and ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10 on the level of like, let's say a 1 is the most disappointing. A 1 is like the glare you get from your father when you really messed up, you know, just like the... He has like the head nod. It's not just like a look of disapproval, it's like a... I can't even look at you right now. Oh yeah, he does this too. He just like goes up here, he's like, oh my god, my eyes hurt to even look at the sheer amount of disappointment you have wrought. All right, so that's a 1. All right, and then a 10 is just like, oh, good job, son. Good job. You did it. You achieved all of your dreams and all of my dreams at the same time. Good job, son. So that's the scale we're working with right now. Are you along with me? Okay, great. Well, let's get the easy ones out of the way first. If we're going to rank the 11 supernovas or the super rookies, I like supernovas. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody commenting like, why are you calling them the supernovas? That was something that was added in the Viz. I think the original is just super rookies, but supernova sounds cool, you know? All right, so let's start with the Straw Hats. Let's start with Luffy and Zoro. I'm throwing them in together because they are both perfect 10s. Luffy and Zoro, man, conquer the world. I mean, it is a little bit, you know, bias in their favor considering the fact that they're part of the Straw Hat crew, you know, and the fact that also, you know, Luffy is the main character of the manga. So we're going to kind of focus on his journey. And also, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I've heard a word through the grapevine or two that Luffy's gonna be king of the pirates. And considering the fact that Luffy is in fact the protagonist and the main character of this entire manga, which has spanned over 25 years, over 1,000 chapters and episodes of a popular anime, and is getting a live action anime adaptation this week, I'm gonna assume that he's going to become the king of the pirates, all right? So Luffy gets a 10, and Zoro gets a 10 as well. Honestly, I was thinking about putting Luffy at 10 and Zoro at 11, but I was like, no, I have a scale. Let's stick to it, all right? They're both very successful in their own rights. You know, Luffy is there. He's the man with the vision, and Zoro is there as his first mate, as his first companion, the first person that joined the Straw Hats, and he's going to make Luffy's dream come true no matter what, okay? Maybe in that regard, you could put Luffy as 10 and then Zoro as 9, but no. They're both 10s. They've both been in this story a lot, okay? So we're gonna go with that. 0 disappointment from Luffy or from Zoro, okay? The stuff that these characters have been through and have done for each other, especially Zoro during Thriller Bark, we all know what happened there, except nobody knows what happened there because nothing happened there. Shut up. They deserve the top of this scale here. All right. And also, moving along to somebody else who's a perfect 10, we're gonna go with Law. Like, I debated giving him a 9, like, 1 rank below Luffy and Zoro, but okay, number 1, Law traveled with the Straw Hats for a long time in this story, okay? From Punk Hazard to Dressrosa to Zoe, wasn't in Whole Cake Island really at all, but then all to Wano, which was, like, the longest arc in the story. Law has been an integral part of this story. He might as well be considered a main character, and he's a huge, big explosion with the fans. Everybody loves Law. You know, you gotta remember, Punk Hazard was like in 2012, I remember reading those chapters. And Wano just concluded last year in 2022. Right, yeah, I was gonna say 2021, and just like, oh no, last year was 2022. Right, so for 10 years, essentially, with Whole Cake being a little bit of a break, for 10 years, though, Law was at the forefront of this story right alongside the Straw Hats at Dressrosa and Zoe and Wano. Like, he was there, and he did a lot of stuff, all right? So he has become insanely popular with the fan base. I did a whole video series about Law, Law Week, which was a really great time, and we really delved into Law. There's been light novels written about him. You can buy his hats. He's got merch, you know what I mean? So I would be remiss to give Law anything other than a perfect 10, all right? Law is like, okay, if we're going along with the dad acknowledgement analogy, Luffy and Zoro are like the dad's sons that are like, all right, sons, you have met my expectations and have exceeded them. And Law, meanwhile, is like one of your son's friends that is just like hangs out in the house a lot, so it's basically your kid, and it's just like, oh my god, you too, you're also super successful, I'm proud of all of you. That kind of situation, right? That's great. Should we get to Eustace now? I'm not going to, because that would be mean. That would be mean to go Luffy, Zoro, Law, and then immediately compare to Kid, and then no, we're not doing that. If we have 3 perfect 10s in a row, let's dial it back a little bit to somebody that's perfectly average. Let's dial back to somebody that would be like a 5. Someone that isn't a massive disappointment in the Supernovas, but also hasn't done so much stuff that it's like, oh wow, everything with this character has been realized. Who would be right in the middle? I'm going to go right now with Bonney. I'm gonna give Jory Bonney a 5 on this, okay? And she gets that 5 just because we have the moments with her and Egghead right now. She would be lower if we didn't have her. Like, if Bonney was just excluded from Egghead, she would just, be way lower right now in terms of what was, like, done with her character, okay? So, Bonney, okay. She gets captured almost immediately upon entering the new world. After, the Straw Hats decide to train, and they go off in their separate islands, and they're doing that for 2 years. The rest of the super rookies, except for Law, decide to go into the new world. So Apoo and Bege, and they get kind of like an intense baptism when they go into the new world. They encounter a lot of crazy stuff, like Urouge goes to Raijin Island, and, Bege gets sucked up by this giant planet moon thing, which may or may not be the sky weapon, who knows, right? Okay, so that all happens to them. Law decides to stay behind and train for a little bit longer. He's gonna, plan some stuff out with the Rocky Port, okay? But Bonney goes, and she immediately gets captured by Akainu, which I gotta admit, I remember that scene, and I felt really, Bonney was one of the more interesting ones, in my opinion, at the time. This was before the time skip or anything like that, before we knew really anything about her character. And I'm like, cool, I want to see Bonney do some stuff, and then immediately gets captured by Akainu. Now, thankfully, she escapes. She gets away. So when we do skip to 2 years later and we see Bonney in the new world, she's on her own. She's on the run. She doesn't have her crew to help her anymore. She doesn't really have her ship anymore. We do see all that during Stampede, which actually creates I mean, the movies are never canon, but the idea that Bonney now has her crew back and a ship in Stampede does lead to some questions there. I guess that's the timeline where she never got captured by Akainu. But yeah, her crew, the Bonney Pirates, did get all captured by the Marines and I guess are in Impel Down right now. Bonney herself was able to escape, all right? So she's gone, and we don't see much of her. I mean, she pops in every once in a while to, like, kind of mention, like, she's reading the paper on some random island eating pizza, and she's like, oh my god, this is so horrible. I can't believe they would do such a thing. I'll never forgive them. And then, like, that's it. And then we just cut away. It's just like, What can't you forgive? What's going on here, lady? Right? And even then, when she shows up at Reverie, we get a little bit more detail into her character and stuff like that, where she's there to rescue Kuma. So it's like, okay, there's a connection there. I think it is during Reverie we find out that Kuma is Bonnie's father. Or we know that Bonney, it looks a lot like Connie, who is the Queen Dowager of the Sorbet Kingdom. So it's slowly coalescing. It just took a while to get there, okay? But now now that we're at Egghead, we're learning a lot more about Bonnie's backstory with Kuma, and she had those tearful, heartfelt moments in the paw room experiencing all of Kuma's memories. That's where a lot of the points come from, in my opinion. We're not really out of Egghead yet, so after the Egghead arc has concluded and we actually find out more about Bonney, which I'm sure there's going to be a good, conclusion to her character development in this particular arc, I think her stock is going to rise a little bit. She might go higher than just her 5 right now, but I think that's fair to put her at a 5, considering where, she's been gone for a majority of the second half of One Piece. Now just showing back up. She's getting her arc right now at Egghead, okay? So, she was a 5. Now is it time to go to Eustace, Captain Kid? Okay, alright. So let's just tackle Kid and Killer together. Same deal with Luffy and Zoro. They're on the same crew. It's the captain, first mate pair. I will give Eustace, Captain Kid, on the disappointment meter, I will give him a 6. I will give him a 6. He still did a lot of stuff in Wano. I think he deserves that. I am giving Killer a 7. I think Killer ranks higher than Kid for me, honestly, and we'll get into that in a moment, okay? If I made this video immediately after Wano, like post-Wano, not up to chapter 1079 yet, and you know what happens in chapter 1079 to Kid's crew. If I were to make this video prior to that, these both of them would have ranked a lot higher, okay? I don't know where I would have put them. Maybe Eustace would have been like, he might have went up from a 6 to a 7. Who knows, right? But then the scene with Shanks on Elbaf happened, and yeah, okay. Honestly speaking, though, I don't think I would have changed Killer's ranking. I'm pretty confident with Killer being a 7 where he's at right now. I might even give him an 8, honestly, because here's the reason, all right? So you got Captain Kid, and he's charging into all these fights, and, a lot of times in this story when he does that, I'm starting to think maybe Oda's trying to tell us something like, it's all right when Luffy does it, because he's the main character, but if anybody else tries that cowboy shit, and just like, yippee-ki-yay, I'm gonna start unloading onto Elbaf there, no, you're not the main character, Kid, you can't do that, all right, it's not gonna end well. The memes are strong with Kid, useless Captain Mid and what have you. But I will say, he did a good chunk of stuff in Wano. Maybe not in the initial stages of Wano, but it was him and Law working together that took down one of the Emperors of the Sea. That took down Big Mom. He's gonna deserve some points for that, all right? He's gonna rank higher than just average for that, okay? Once again, if it was prior to Shanks' whole moment, then he would have been a little bit higher there. But the reason I rank Killer higher, for one thing, I think his arc in Wano as Kamazo was way more interesting than anything happening with Kid. All right, the fact that Kid was captured by Kaido and then Killer and the crew was like, we're gonna save our captain. That's like a whole story in the background that was never really addressed, but could have been like a nice little side story or something, right? Killer's like, we're gonna get back the captain, and so he has to make this Faustian deal with Orochi, who's basically the devil himself. Killer, you want to save your captain? Okay, I'll tell you what, you have these devil fruits in front of you. You could become a smile user and work for me. I am Lord Orochi. Ha ha ha. And then Killer decides to go ahead with it, and he's like, okay, if you'll let my captain go, I will, I'll do this. And he eats it, and he becomes a pleasure, and he becomes essentially Orochi's hitman, okay? So he, his mask is taken off of him. He has to bandage up his face. He's forced to show his face, which he doesn't like. He's forced to, constantly be laughing, which he was always embarrassed by his laugh. So Orochi took all this from him, his own personal dignity away from him, and then is basically served as a glorified hitman, and just like, you will do whatever I say now, and eventually I will release your captain. I am Lord Orochi! Ha ha ha! And then Killer is like, okay, well, there's really not much else I can do here, so I'm gonna go with this, okay? So I was way more invested in the Kamazo stuff, and we don't stick around with the Kamazo stuff for very long. It's not a very long subplot in Wano, but in the initial stages, it's there. And, I felt for Kamazo. I really genuinely felt bad for Killer, because of what he did, what he went through. He literally gave up part of his own dignity because he hates his laugh. He's very embarrassed by that. And it's like, okay, I'll save your captain, but now you're going to be laughing for the rest of your life. I mean, that's giving up a part of you there. That's not super easy to make, but he made that deal. And he, by the way, ate a failed smile. He didn't even get the power, okay, which honestly might have been advantageous because I think we did see sketch artwork of what his power would have been, and I think it would have been an elephant smile. And yeah, how it turned out, I think Killer might have honestly dodged a bullet there. But still, the idea that he became a smile user that is irreversible, it seems. Like Chopper wasn't able to heal anybody like that. Oda even specified that Chopper's medical knowledge is not enough to like cure the smile users, okay? So, as of right now, Killer is just stuck like that, laughing like a madman for the rest of his life. So, you know, that's his story. Kid, by and large, didn't really have much else going for him. We get a lot of Kid's backstory, not a lot of it, but we get some of it in the SBSs. But none of it is really touched upon in Wano in a major way. They did more with it in the anime than they did in the manga. But there wasn't a scene like, you know, like Kid and Killer had a crush on this girl growing up, Victoria, and she was killed by the bosses of the island, and so they named their ship the Victoria Punk after her. I don't know. It could have had a moment like during when Kid was fighting against Kaido's men, or they were fighting against Big Mom or something. Maybe Kid could have had a flashback, and he's like holding Victoria's dead body, and he's just like, no! And it like could have been a moment like that where we get a little bit of backstory with Kid and stuff, something on that level, but we don't really get any of that. But we do get a lot more character development with Killer, and then Killer had the fight with Hawkins, which was only like one chapter really, but it was good. Okay, by the way, I wonder where Hawkins is going to end up on this. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going with Eustace Kid as a 6. He's kind of lucky he gets that, and then I'm giving Killer a 7, because honestly, I think he ranks higher. Also, Killer is always the voice of reason. He's always the person in the background that's like, Kid, is this a good idea? I don't think we should do this. And Kid just always disregards his best friend's advice and just like, yeah, screw it, we're going to Elbaf. This is really not a good idea. You sure we should go to Elbaf? Hell yeah, we're going. All right, you're the captain. And then they see Shanks there, and Killer again is like, Shanks is here. He ripped your arm off. He wasn't even the one that did it. Ben Beckman's the one that probably ripped his arm off. And Killer's like, do you want to go do this again? We should turn around right now. And Kid's like, screw that. Damned punk. Bam, bam, bam. And then Killer's like, and just like, so it's kind of hard not to feel for the dude who's the constant voice of reason. By the way, a dude named Killer, massacre machine, murder machine Killer, is the voice of reason on the crew. And Kid just disregards the advice and just charges headlong in. And in the last moment, and in chapter 1079, last time we saw them, results in Kid and Killer both being almost killed. Like, you know, Shanks didn't really pull his punches there. I mean, they're both on the edge of death there. And then their entire ship just getting cut in half and obliterated by Dory and Broggy. So, you know, if Kid would have just listened to Killer on most... Killer should be the captain of this crew. Are we all in agreement here? He should be. All right. I feel more pity for Killer, if nothing else. All right. But let me know how you feel about that character. Okay. Moving on. Who's next? Drake. I'm giving him a 3. I'm sorry, Drake. I'm giving him a 3. You gotta say, hey, Eustace Kid and Law took out a Yonko. What did Drake accomplish during Wano? Well, we found out he was a member of SWORD. We found out SWORD's existence through him. So, okay. All right. That's cool, I guess. He turned into a dinosaur. He did that. I think he beat one of the numbers. Yeah, when, like, he charged down into the festival hall and Luffy was there and Drake had that moment where he's like, I want to be your ally. Let me fight alongside you. That really didn't go anywhere. They defeated one of the numbers there, like the 3 numbers, and, like, I think Luffy took out one and Frankie took out one, and then, or maybe Yamato took out one there, and then Drake took out one as well, so okay. But it didn't really lead to anything else. I mean, Jinbei had a moment where like, hey, Luffy, maybe you shouldn't, you know, trust this guy at face value. Drake kind of shows up at Festival Hall, let me fight alongside you. And like, okay, I guess. And then he just kind of runs off. We don't see him for a while. He chases after Apoo for a bit. kind of a little vaudevillian comedy routine there, and eventually ends up in a battle with the Cypher Pole. And dude, even when you cut back to them fighting, and I understand there's a lot of moving parts of Wano, so we can't see every single fight, but we cut back to Drake fighting, Dripper Scarfino, as Randy Troy would call him. I think his real name is Joseph. I was like, I don't even remember all their names. I'm not even gonna bother. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So it looks like he wins, right? It looks like he kind of defeated him in kind of a similar way, like Izo and Mahab were both killed in the fight. Like, they died, but they both lost, kind of situation. It was a draw. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it was something like that with Drake, where Drake's going to take out, the hat-wearing the bowler dude, and it's just like, I think Guernica is his name. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to take him out, and then I'm going to collapse, and, like, that's going to be the end of his thing. Like, Drake's not dead, but, like, he took out at least one of the members of Cypher Pole Zero, but he didn't even accomplish that. Not even that. He had a moment where he's like, I win, and then he's like, I envy you, Drake. Zip, shot, and then we have the moment where the Cypher Pole Zero agent is now free to go to the roof and then interfere with the fight. Drake, if you would have only done your job, then the Cypher Pole Zero agent would not have made it to the roof. He would not have Luffy using his over-Kong gun against Kaido, and Kaido would have probably just beaten Luffy anyway. Honestly, I'm telling you what, that final clash there before the Cypher Pole Zero agent interfered, I think Kaido was going to win anyway. Kaido still had a lot of gas left in the tank. There were still some techniques. He hadn't even used the lava dragon thing yet. So I don't think Luffy in that one moment, like the over-Kong gun, would have worked. I think it would have been a similar situation to when Luffy fought Katakuri, and they both hit each other at the same time, but Luffy hit slightly sooner. I think it would have been reversed, where Luffy and Kaido would have hit each other at almost the same time, but Kaido would have hit Luffy first. And Luffy would have went down, and then Gear 5th would have still happened. All right? I don't think the Cypher Pole Zero's interference was necessary. Like, oh, Luffy would have won that fight if it wasn't for him. No, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have. Even if they would have hit each other, they would have gotten knocked back. Kaido still had the giant molten dragon form, and Luffy was at Gear 4th. He was kind of even said, like, I'm going to give Gear 4th one last try, and that's it, right? But still, it was disappointing to see Drake go out like that, Like, he seemed to win the fight, and he let his guard down. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm not dead yet. I still have all this extra shoomp, Shigon, and then Drake just goes down, and that's kind of it. He shows up at the end in the ruins of Onigashima, so he's not dead. At least I don't think he's dead. Hawkins is probably dead more than likely. But Drake, unfortunate. I'm giving him a 3. Maybe you could give him a 4. No, I'm giving him a 3. All right. Moving on. Speaking of Hawkins, let's talk about him next. I'm going to give him the disappointment glare myself. You know what, Hawkins? Basil Hawkins. I believed in you. I genuinely believed in you, man. I thought you could do some cool stuff in this series, I bet money on you at one point, man. You had your cool tarot cards. You could affect fate and reality with them, apparently. Face up, face down. Face up, face down. You had your straw man. You can make a giant straw man thing. You can make a scarecrow attack people. That thing looked cool. Gomu no So. You have the straw coming out of you and attacking people. That was a cool form. You had the extra life bullshit. Yeah, that was neat. You had the cool face makeup. You were a magician. You had a fairly high bounty. I believed in you, man. What do we get from Hawkins? He fights against Zoro and Luffy very briefly at the beginning of Wano. They run away from him. Like, that's it. He does the really cool, like, woo, and then they just run away from him. Okay, cool. And then he kind of disappears for, like, ever. I mean, he shows up to, like, look for Soba Mask in the city, but, like, he doesn't do anything there, so who cares? There's the scene with the bath, which is more of a thing for Drake, if anything. Oh, yeah, the scene with the bath. That's something else that maybe Drake Maybe that's why he gets the 3 as well, the bath scene. But anyway, he disappears for a good long while. I remember a while in this arc thinking, like, he interrogates Law. Okay, sure. But I remember for a while thinking to myself, like, when is Hawkins going to do something here, right? So the battle starts, the raid starts at Onigashima, and we still don't really see much of him. And I'm like, when is he going to do, like, anything? He's a supernova. Like, he should, like, get, like, some, like, a big moment here or something, right? And so he does the thing where he's like, oh, a certain person will be dead, you know, by, like, I think, what did he say? Like, the next day or, like, the following day or something like that. Has a 1% chance of surviving this battle or something like that. So it's like, okay. So we finally do get the encounter with him and Killer. In the latter stages of the raid, he finally shows up and is like, okay, he's fighting against Killer. And we get one chapter with him, which I think speaks more volumes for Killer than it does for Hawkins. And Hawkins loses in, like, it was okay. It was clever on Killer's part on how he wins the fight. Well, like, cutting the arm off, like, kid doesn't have an arm. Should have been something that Hawkins should have realized. Like, I'm going to make a voodoo doll of kid. So every time Killer stabs me, he's stabbing his captain. It's foolproof. Wahaha! Except for the fact that kid doesn't have an arm. I should maybe factor that in. It's like, what? No, I didn't! I'm like, okay, that seems to be more of like an oversight on your part, Hawkins. So Killer just kind of just cuts him down, and that's it. And that's it. He shows up in the ruins of Onigashima alongside with Drake, and is like, hey, how you doing, man? He's like, I'm not feeling too good here. I think that person I talked about was myself. So I'm gonna die now, I guess. Later. The dude had all these cool techniques with the tarot cards and, like, the different, like, aspects of, like, you know, he could have we did not even see Hawkins activate Zoro. I mean, come on now. What did we see? We saw the tower. We saw the Hierophant, I think. We didn't see Zoro. I thought there was, like, I just think there's more stuff they could have done with him. Maybe he's not dead, though, because, you know, this is One Piece, and characters that are dead are not usually dead for long, so maybe he'll come back. But I gotta give Hawkins, like, a 2. I gotta give him a 2. You know, he did some stuff. The setup was nice for his character, so I'll give him a 2. But that's being exceedingly generous, Hawkins. Exceedingly generous here, okay? Okay. Moving on. Capone. Now, let's talk about Capone, all right? I'm giving him an 8, all right? Capone Bege, the father, I'm giving him an 8, all right? I've always liked this dude's setup. You know, he's just mafioso Al Capone dude, chilling out at Sabaody, having a nice meal there. He's just, like, above all of the typical pirate fare. You know, he's a much more high-class kind of individual. You know, the scene where he's just walking around Sabaody and then you get the reveal of, you know, his devil fruit, that was one of the more interesting ones. Like, oh, he has a castle inside of him. That's cool. And then we eventually get to Zoe, where he, you know, reveals himself, I work for Big Mom and everything, and you're coming back with us, and I'm going to gun down Peckham's because he didn't play by the rules. You're coming with us. And then we even get some lore with him during Whole Cake Island, where we find out that he's a member of, like, these 5 mafia families and how he got his start as a pirate. Heading out, we get some good backstory, some lore, world building and shit a little bit along the way with the West Blue. That was really nice. I think the Shiro no Mi, the castle fruit, is a very clever ability. You can do a lot of stuff with it. You can go into his castle. He can make little forms of himself. He can reshape it however he wants. So you get a feel for his own personality in his castle. That's nice. His relationship with Chiffon, his wife, is actually kind of wholesome, along with his son, Pez. I like their little family dynamic. I thought it was really cute. You know, how, like, you know, Bege is this horrible, like, cold-blooded, stone-cold killer who'll gun somebody down right in front of him, but he's just like, aw, hello there, little Pez, how you doing, buddy? And Pez is like, Dada, Dada, and he's like, this is how your father lives, Pez, and Pez is like, ah. Pez is gonna grow up to be a great mafia pirate someday, guys. Mark my words. Pez is going places, all right? He's going to lead the family, all right? But yeah, and Chiffon and Bege are very clearly in love. It was an arranged marriage, but it wasn't something that they like both despise. They truly love each other and support one another and help each other out. And yeah, you know, generally, I love the look of their ship, and I was honestly kind of upset when they had to abandon it and it was destroyed. A lot more than I was when the Victoria Punk was destroyed. You know what I mean? I actually felt for their ship, okay? You know, not on the level of the Mary or anything, but it was up there, okay? They also just baseline the idea of a mafia pirate is cool, all right? It's just cool, right? It's almost as cool as a magician pirate, but, you know, Oda actually went somewhere with Bege, okay? The cover story got his own cover story, and that was fun to read. So yeah, I'm giving Bege an 8. You know what I mean? He's done some stuff in this story. I'm proud of Bege. Good job, Bege. All right. And who do we got next? Apoo. Apoo. Oh, man. I'm giving him a 2. I'm putting him in the Hawkins club. All right. I'm giving Apoo a 2. Apoo is, from the beginning, if you were just going to like ask me who was my least favorite Supernova when they were initially introduced at Sabaody, I think I would say Apoo. I was a little interested in his devil fruit, but other than that, he just didn't really do it for me. I don't know. And then we found out that his whole thing is essentially, oh, I'm just like a double crosser for a living. That's just what I do, you know? I'm going to double cross Kid and Hawkins for Kaido, and then when shit starts going south, I'm going to double cross Kaido. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem very sustainable, but he managed to make it out, which is something I can't say for Hawkins. So at the end of it, he was just kind of hanging out there by the docks, and he's like, hey, you guys want to see the newspaper? Okay. Yeah, Apoo, he had the encounter with Drake, but that was really off screen for most of it. We didn't see much of it there. Like, I guess there was something more to that, you know, maybe like Drake going after Apoo and everything, but I feel like it should have been Hawkins or Kid. Kid did have the interaction with Apoo and kind of attacked him on the festival stage, like, this is my revenge for you betraying me. But it wasn't, you know, Kid actually being the one to take out Apoo. I think that's the one that should have happened, either him or Hawkins. Hawkins versus Apoo, I think, would have made a lot more sense. And then Hawkins actually coming out on top against Apoo, that would have been fun. That would have been fun. We finally got the name of his devil fruit. It's the Oto Oto no Mi. Different parts of his body turn into instruments. He's got a triangle on his dick. That was explained, so that's fun. Maybe I should give him a 3 just for the triangle dick. No, I'm keeping him 2. I'm giving him a 2. Yeah, but overall, his character just seemed like honestly, it seemed very shallow to me. Like, his thing is just like, I'm just gonna betray everybody. That's my thing. I was like, okay, that's your thing, but doesn't really work for me in a character, so I'm giving him a 2. All right. So who's left? Oh, yeah, okay. We have one guy left. We have one person left, okay? We got Mad Monk Urouge. Urouge! All right. So, if I gave Hawkins a 2, and I gave Apoo a 2, I gave Drake a 3, I gave Bonney a 5, Kid a 6, Killer a 7, Law, Luffy, and Zoro all got 10s. You'd think Urouge has to be the one that I give a 1, right? Like, what has Urouge accomplished here? Let's go through it. It won't take long, all right? Urouge shows up at Sabaody. He fights against the Pacifista, goes into his retribution form, picks up a giant pillar, smacks a Pacifista, kind of gets knocked down, and then gets defeated by Kizaru, gets lasered by Kizaru. All right. Then he shows up, going into the New World, approaching Raijin Island. A creepy old lady who I believe was just named Casa because umbrella means Casa. Casa is umbrella in Japanese. And she was like, would you like an umbrella, dearie? And it's like, that's her name. So, and then Urouge is like, I'm not sure. And then that was the end of that. I guess he went to Raijin Island, but we don't see it. And then many chapters go by. We see him at Balloon Terminal. Kaido jumps off Balloon Terminal. He says a little prayer for Kaido, which that was nice. That was nice. He says a prayer. We find out secondhand from Cracker that he defeated Snack. So Urouge is the one. He has at least one victory under his belt, and that's Snack, who was a Sweet Commander, who was honestly the weakest of the Sweet Commanders. If you look at the bounties of the Sweet Commanders, it's like Cracker and Smoothie were all like around 800-900 million. Katakuri was at over 1 billion, and Snack was way down in like the 600 millions. So he was obviously the weakest of the Sweet Commanders that Urouge defeated, but he did defeat him. And then Cracker showed up and defeated Urouge, and that's why he was on Balloon Terminal resting. So that was that. And when was that now? When we found out about that was at the beginning of Whole Cake when Luffy fought Cracker. So probably like 800 and chapter 840, something like that around there. That was 940, 1040. That was almost 300 chapters ago. Urouge, is it fair to say he's a disappointment when he hasn't really had a chance to show anything? You know what I mean? He hasn't really had a moment to really show off. Like, does he have his devil fruit? Does he have hockey? What's up with him being a Bjerken? He's from the sky. He's got retribution. His crew all look like fallen monks. You know, they got the creepy cult thing kind of going on here. He's Buddhist, I guess. Is it fair to give him a 1 in disappointment, to give him the disapproving dad glare? He hasn't even had a shot yet. He hasn't even had a chance. The coach hasn't even put him into the game yet, you know? You know what? I'm giving him infinity. That's right. You know why? Because he has potential. He has potential. We don't even know what Urouge might have the best story out of all of the Supernovas. We don't know. Who can be certain, right? Unlimited potential. Anybody's guess. What is that from? That's from Rick and Morty. That's from Bruce Chupback. Yeah, it's like, you know, no credit is perfect credit. Urouge is the best. Let's go with that. Let's go with that. Sure. We don't know. Maybe we might cut away after Egghead. The Straw Hats are sailing away from Egghead, and they look down, and they see Urouge's dead body floating in the ocean. And they're like, who's that? I'm like, who cares? We're going to Elbaf, right? Or maybe Urouge might show up, and he might drop some huge, you know, info exposition bombs on everybody. He just knows, you know what I mean? He's like, I was a Skypean. I was a Bjerken. I knew Eneru personally. And maybe his existence is the vehicle from when Eneru returns. Maybe Urouge is up in the sky right now. He's like, screw the blue sea. I'm going back up to the sky. And he goes back up to the sky, and he meets Eneru as Eneru's coming back down, and Urouge and Eneru might have an interaction, and that's how Eneru gets back in the story. Infinity, I'm giving Urouge. You can't stop me. It's my video. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't have any more Xenomorph facts for you today. I'm not done yet. I think I'm going to do one more Xenomorph fact, and then we'll move on to the letter Y. I know what I'm doing for the letter Y already. I got the rest of animal facts on lockdown. This is going to be fun. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, that's my ranking of the level of disappointment of all of the different supernovas. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know on how you view it personally down below. Later, everybody.